Deadliest Catch deckhand Todd Meadows dead after an accident on the Bering Sea. He was only 25 years old. Todd, who had yet to appear on TV, was the newest member aboard the Aleutian Lady.
Todd Meadows never appeared in a single aired episode of Deadliest Catch. Millions of people watch that show every season, and they never got to see his face, never got to hear his laugh, never got to watch him work. By the time the world learned his name, there was nothing left to show them except the space where he used to be. But Todd Meadows lived an entire life before the Bering Sea took him, and almost nobody has stopped long enough to actually tell it. The last day on the Bering Sea. It was late afternoon on February 25th, 2026. The fishing vessel Aleutian Lady was working the Bering Sea, 170 miles north of Dutch Harbor, Alaska. The sun was already low. The water was black and impossibly cold. And somewhere on that deck, in the middle of hauling crab and doing the brutal, unglamorous work that commercial fishing actually is, a 25-year-old man from a small town in Washington state went over the side. Nobody who was not on that boat knows exactly what happened in the seconds before Todd Meadows hit the water. The official investigation is still ongoing. The Coast Guard has not released the full details. What we know is that one moment he was there, and the next moment he was not. And the Bering Sea does not pause to let you process that difference. When a human body hits water that cold, the temperature sitting somewhere between 28 and 40 degrees Fahrenheit in late February, the body does not ease into danger. It is ambushed by it. In the first few seconds, something called cold shock takes over completely. The body forces a massive involuntary gasp before the person even has a chance to decide whether to take a breath. The heart rate spikes to terrifying levels. Breathing becomes rapid and completely out of control. The lungs start pulling in water, whether the person wants them to or not. Strong swimmers have drowned in cold water in under a minute, simply because their bodies stopped cooperating before their minds could catch up. This is not a slow decline. It is an immediate emergency from the moment of contact. The crew of the Aleutian Lady got Todd out of the water in approximately 10 minutes. That is extraordinary seamanship. In the chaos of a man-overboard situation, in those seas, at that time of evening, pulling someone back onto a crab vessel in 10 minutes is almost remarkable. And it still was not enough. By the time they lifted him back onto the deck, Todd Meadows was unresponsive. The crew started resuscitation immediately. They worked on him. They tried everything they knew to try. But the Bering Sea had already done what the Bering Sea does, and all their effort, all their desperation, all the love that had built up for this young man in just 6 weeks on that boat could not reverse what the cold had already decided. Whether Todd had managed to get into a survival suit before he went into the water has never been confirmed. That question matters enormously because a proper immersion suit can extend survival time dramatically in those temperatures. The investigation may eventually answer that question. Right now, it is one of the cruelest unknowns in an already unbearable story. To understand why Todd Meadows was on the Bering Sea at 25, you have to understand where he came from and what fishing meant to his family. The boy from Montesano who was born to fish. Todd grew up in Montesano, Washington. It is a small town of about 4,000 people tucked into Grays Harbor County on Washington's coast, the kind of place where the economy has always been tied to what the land and water can provide. Timber, fishing, the outdoor life. It is not a wealthy town. It is a hard-working one. And Todd Meadows was shaped by it completely. His father, Lucas Meadows, introduced him to fishing when Todd was 3 years old, not just as something to do on weekends, but as a way of life, a language. a bond between a father and a son that never really needed words. That early love never faded and never became complicated. While other kids in Grays Harbor County were figuring out who they wanted to be, Todd already knew. He was going to fish. He was going to work on the water. And one day, he was going to captain his own boat. His mother, Angela, described this quality in her son with a mixture of pride and heartbreak. When he sets his mind to something, she said, he just does not give up. The captain's dream was not a fantasy he held loosely. It was a destination he was actively working toward, step by step, season by season. After spending years learning on Washington's rivers and inshore waters, Todd transitioned to charter fishing in northern Washington. From charter work, he pushed into commercial fishing, a world with a completely different set of physical and financial demands. He had been working in commercial fishing for roughly 4 years before he joined the Aleutian Lady. He was not a complete rookie to life. He was a rookie to that specific vessel, that specific crew, and those specific waters. But the hunger for the work, the willingness to put himself in brutal conditions for the reward of a full boat and a full paycheck, that was not new to him at all. He found his way to the Aleutian Lady through a personal connection, the way most crew slots on crab boats get filled. His Facebook page showed him listing deckhand work beginning in May of 2025. His cousin Paige Knutson told reporters he formally joined for the crab season starting in January of 2026. He moved to Alaska. He left his sons behind temporarily, the way every commercial fisherman in that industry does, telling himself and them that the money would make the sacrifice worth it. On a successful crab season, a good deckhand on the Bering Sea can earn 6 figures in a matter of weeks. Todd was working toward a future. He just never got to live in it. Most of the recent coverage of Todd Meadows' death focused on the accident. The cold water, the 10 minutes, the failed resuscitation, the investigation. Those things matter, and they deserve to be told. But there is another part of this story that has been sitting quietly in the background, and it is in some ways the most heartbreaking part of everything. A love story that never got to finish. Todd Meadows did not just leave behind 3 young sons, he left behind someone who had been planning a future with him right up until the moment he went into that water. Her name is Kennedy Harvey. She is from Aberdeen, Washington, right next door to Montesano. She and Todd had 3 boys together, all of them under 5 years old at the time of his death. The youngest was still a baby. The oldest was barely old enough to understand that time passes and that people who leave sometimes come back and sometimes do not. Kennedy posted a tribute to Todd on Facebook the day after he died. It is not the kind of writing that comes from grief that has had time to settle and organize itself. It is raw and immediate and completely unguarded. And it tells you more about who Todd Meadows was than any official statement or news article ever could. She wrote that he was not only the father of her children, he was her best friend. She wrote that no matter what terms they were on at any given moment, they always came back to each other for comfort, and that nobody else quite understood why but the 2 of them. That line is the one that stays with you, because it describes a relationship that was real and complicated and alive. And then she wrote the sentence that is almost impossible to finish reading without feeling something break open. Our story was not over yet. We were supposed to get it right. We were supposed to get married and have our happy little family. One of their sons, Lawson, had been asking for his father every single day after Todd left for Alaska. That detail is almost too much to sit with, because it means Lawson was already missing him before anything went wrong. He was already waiting. He just did not know yet that the waiting had become permanent. Now, let's get back to the recent tragedy and tell you some shocking details about the vessel. The captain, the crew, and the vessel with a troubled past. The Aleutian Lady is a 125-foot crab vessel built in 1980. Captain Rick Shelford Jr., a fourth-generation Alaskan fisherman who started as a greenhorn in 1997 under his own father, brought the boat to Deadliest Catch, beginning in Season 19 in 2023. The Shelford family has been fishing these waters for generations. Rick Jr. grew up in this life the same way Todd hoped his own sons would come to understand it, as something sacred and defining and deeply tied to who your family is. Captain Shelford waited until March 2nd to publicly announce Todd's death on Facebook, nearly a week after it happened. That delay likely reflects the weight of what he was carrying. He did not write a corporate statement. He wrote like a man who had just lost someone he cared about. He called February 25th the most tragic day in the history of the Aleutian Lady. He said the crew had lost their brother. He described how quickly Todd had become part of the family despite being the newest man aboard. His love for fishing and his strong work ethic earned everyone's respect right away, Shelford wrote. His smile was contagious. The sound of his laughter coming up the wheelhouse stairs or over the deck hailer is something we will carry with us always. There is a shadow that hangs over the Aleutian Lady's history, and it became relevant again the moment news of Todd's death broke. In Season 19, before the boat left port, Captain Sean Dwyer had been brought on to co-captain the vessel. But Dwyer grew alarmed at what he saw. He said on camera that he felt like corners were being cut. He said he did not feel it was safe to depart. Shelford dismissed the concerns entirely. Dwyer ultimately left the vessel before it sailed, and eventually left the show. No safety incident was publicly reported from that season, but Dwyer's words, spoken years before Todd ever came aboard, have been replayed and reconsidered by viewers and fishing industry observers in the wake of what happened in February 2026. The Coast Guard investigation will need to answer questions that no tribute post can. What made Todd want to be on this particular boat, under this particular captain, in the most unforgiving fishing grounds on the planet? His own family gave the clearest answer. He just wanted to work, his mother Angela said. The cameras and the television production, that part actually irritated him. He was not chasing fame. He was chasing a crab. He was chasing the paycheck that would fund his son's futures and the experience that would one day put him in the captain's chair of his own vessel. The Deadliest Catch cameras were simply the context in which he happened to be pursuing that goal. This is something deeply uncomfortable. The fact that Todd Meadows died during the filming of a television show whose central promise to its audience is that the people on screen might not make it home. That discomfort is worth sitting with rather than glossing over, because it gets at something true and troubling about what Deadliest Catch actually is and what it asks of the people who appear in it. The show that turns danger into entertainment. Deadliest Catch premiered in 2005, and it built its entire identity on something real and uncomfortable. Commercial fishing in the Bering Sea is genuinely the most dangerous job in America. That is not a marketing claim. That is a statistical fact documented by the Centers for Disease Control, OSHA, and decades of fatality reports. The overall fatality rate for commercial fishing workers exceeds 100 deaths per 100,000 workers, roughly 30 times the national average for all occupations. In the 1990s, during the Derby-style crab seasons, the show was originally built around The Bering Sea crab fleet was recording death rates approaching 770 per 100,000 workers in peak years. An average of 8 fishermen died every single season. The industry pushed for reforms. The Coast Guard implemented dockside stability inspections in 1999. The crab fisheries transitioned away from the frantic derby system to a quota-based approach starting in 2005, the same year the show premiered. Those changes saved lives. Between 2010 and 2014, the Bering Sea crab fleet recorded 0 fatalities. The reforms worked. Todd Meadows is at least the 16th person connected to Deadliest Catch to die since the show began. The list includes Captain Phil Harris, who suffered a stroke on the deck of the Cornelia Marie in 2010 and died days later. It includes the 5 crew members of the FV Big Valley, who drowned in 2005 when the boat capsized. It includes the 6 men aboard the FV Destination, who all perished when that vessel sank in 2017. It includes Nick McGlashan, whose addiction and death in 2020 raised a different set of painful questions about what the show exposes its participants to. It includes Todd Cochuton, crushed by an 800-pound crab pot in 2021. It includes Nick Mavar, who died of a medical emergency in 2024. Every name on that list was somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's brother. Every name on that list chose the sea, knowing the sea does not make promises. Todd Meadows understood that bargain. He made it anyway. He made it for his boys. The aftermath and the investigation that has no answers yet. When news of Todd's death broke on March 3, 2026, the response from the public was immediate and overwhelming. His cousin Paige Knutson, who lives in Elma, Washington, just a few miles from Montesano, launched a GoFundMe campaign titled Honoring Todd Morgan Meadows. She described Todd the way every person who knew him described him, as a determined father whose entire existence was organized around providing for his children. Everything he did was for them, she wrote. Their smiles, their futures, the memories they will carry with them. The campaign's goal was raised to $45,000 as donations flooded in, reaching nearly $30,000 from close to 500 donors within days of being launched. Knutson told reporters that Todd had wanted to be cremated. The family was planning a celebration of life within a couple of weeks. She also confirmed the timeline of his work on the Aleutian Lady, saying he had started formally with the vessel in January 2026, just weeks before the accident. Discovery Channel issued a statement expressing deep sadness and extending condolences to Todd's family, his crewmates, and the wider fishing community. Warner Brothers Discovery, the parent company, offered similar words. Fremantle, through its subsidiary Original Productions, which makes the show, acknowledged the loss. The Coast Guard investigation is ongoing. That investigation will determine, eventually, exactly how Todd ended up in the water. It will examine the vessel's safety equipment, the crew's training, the conditions that evening, the sequence of events in those final minutes. It may take months. When it concludes, it will produce a report with findings and, possibly, recommendations. It will not bring Todd Meadows back, but it may tell his sons something true about what happened to their father. And that matters, even when the truth is hard. The man behind the tragedy remembered. In the days after Todd's death, the people who knew him best kept coming back to the same handful of things. The smile. Everyone mentioned the smile first. His father Lucas said it persisted through every kind of day, good and bad. Captain Shelford called it contagious. Kennedy Harvey said she fell in love with a man who carried joy so naturally that it became part of the atmosphere around him. On a crab boat in the middle of winter in the North Pacific, that kind of presence is not ordinary. Most men in that environment are exhausted, cold, and focused entirely on the work in front of them. Todd apparently managed to be all of those things and still grin about it. The work ethic. His mother said he did not go to Alaska to be on television. He went to work. His captain said his dedication earned the crew's respect almost immediately, which is not a small thing in a culture where respect is slow to come and quickly revoked. New deckhands on crab boats are tested constantly, sometimes harshly, and a young guy from Washington State walking onto a vessel crewed by seasoned fishermen would have been watched carefully. He apparently answered every skeptical look with hard work and showed up the next day and did it again. His sister Roslyn wrote that she loved her brother dearly and was glad so many people got to know him. The tragedy, of course, is that the world got to know his name only after he was gone. He had not yet appeared in a single episode of Deadliest Catch. He never got his moment on screen, never got the chance to be someone viewers would root for and argue about and follow across seasons. He was the newest member of the crew. He was just beginning. Todd Meadows was a young man who gave everything to a dream and paid the highest possible price for it. And now, 3 little boys are growing up without their father. Drop your thoughts in the comments below and let us know what his story means to you.